This is my first voice vlog for semester 2. So far I've been struggling a bit with our voice lectures just because it's looking into voice in a more detailed way, and we've had to do things where my lack in vocal ability's kind of been emphasised really. We started off this semester by looking at aspects of what makes a compelling voice, and a few of the things that I thought kind of stood out in my opinion was your articulation, your tone. Tone needs to be appropriate, though. It needs to be emotive to what you're actually saying, because you could be speaking with any kind of tone, but it won't be compelling if it's out of place. Similar to that with volume. Like, you want to be able to be heard, but if you've got an inappropriate volume for what you're actually saying, your voice isn't going to be compelling. Resonance is quite important, and that also links into projection. Clarity, strength, and support. And support was one of the more important ones, and that's something that we started looking at further into the semester. We started learning about resonance, and simply resonance is just vibration that makes sound, which is what gives us volume in our voice. And we were learning about resonators, in which parts of our body which actually help produce sound when we speak or sing or make noise. And there's 3 primary resonators, which is your oral cavity, your nasal cavity, and your pharyngeal cavity. These are all conductive, meaning that they're active, so when air is passing through these parts of your face and throat while you're making noise, so they're active. And there's also secondary resonators, which are sympathetic, and they are effective due to the primary ones, so the air isn't actually passing through those areas of the body, but they still vibrate and make bits of resonance through the primary resonators, and they are your maxillary sinus, ethmoid sinus, and sigmoid sinus. So we split vocal ranges into different brackets, in effect. We gave them dogs in order to kind of give us a visual and mental idea of what that vocal bracket would be. So for example, quite a deep voice was a Great Dane, your normal kind of speaking pitch was a Labrador, a slightly higher, more excited tone was a Pug, and the really high pitched kind of bouncy voice was a Chihuahua. This little exercise actually proved quite useful because I felt like it made it slightly easier for me to access a set vocal range just from out of nowhere if I had a kind of visual representation or like an external reference of what that is. Even though it doesn't mean you sound like the dog, it's kind of giving you a slight idea of what you need to be doing with your voice, rather than just being like, I want you to be able to speak in like a high pitch with this kind of tone. It gives you that sort of reference to think, right, it's going to be similar to this, and it gives you that idea of what you need to do with your voice. We then looked at mechanics of breathing, which is something that I have very little knowledge of previously. We started looking at the vocal cords and learning and what they do in order to allow us to breathe or allow us to make noise. And we were told that obviously when your vocal cords are open, air is passing through you. It's very hard to make noise if possible at all. And if you do make noise, it's very, very breathy, because that open passage is just allowing the air in and out. Whereas when they're closed, air can't get through, which allows you then to be able to make noise because they make contact with one another, they kind of slap against each other, and the friction is what makes noise. So as I said, when they're open, they're not making any contact, no noise is going to come out. And we also learn about what we can do in order to help support our voices, which, as I said earlier, was one of the most important things in a compelling voice. We were learning about, and there's 3 kind of layers of muscle down in your lower chest and stomach that are working to support your body as you speak. And the TA muscle, the transversus abdominis, is the one we want to be using for support. And in order to try and do this, we started learning how to release our stomach, or just our chest in general, as when we're taking a breath. And that's something that I really struggled with, because I wasn't too sure what was meant by releasing your stomach. and we were trying to do this in semi-supine, and I just kind of felt like if I just released it, it just sank in on itself. So in order to try and counteract that, we tried it standing up instead, and I felt like it was working more, but I'm still not sure if I'm doing it properly, and that's something that I want to try and work on, because I don't feel like the different posture I'm having has had an effect on my voice yet, and if it has, it hasn't been noticeable to me. Whether it has to others, I'm not sure. We've also started Greek tragedy as well, which is something that I'm not too keen on, but the vocal ranges that we've been learning about and the way that we can kind of support ourselves when we speak, I feel like has had an impact on this, because there's a lot of chorus work, and it's allowed us to be, as a group, to be more adventurous with the chorus lines, that we're kind of supporting one another's voices at different tones and pitches. We're making noises in the background, and that's something that I don't feel would have been as easy to do if we hadn't been practicing these different vocal ranges and ways of accessing them easily with the support in your body. And this has also been backed up by slightly new warm-up exercises, where we've been focusing on like the position of the larynx and your voice box. The one that was quite beneficial that I found, it was quite weird, is where if you are laying down in semi-supine, you kind of take a breath, you swallow and you feel your voice box moving down. If you hold your hand there to kind of keep it in position rather than allowing it to come up naturally, that is just kind of warming up your voice box and your larynx. And it was a weird feeling, but it was something that I kind of felt, it was unnatural, but I could feel it wanting to go back, and I felt as if I was stretching it and making it work harder, which, if that is the case, hopefully should then make talking or singing in different tones easier, because I should have more control over it. Going back to the Greek tragedies, we've been working a lot on our posture, and we stood in a circle, and we were asked to just say our first line. And as we were doing so, our posture was corrected into the way that we feel should be the correct way to stand, correct head position, doing it on just after a short inward breath to see if we could get that power and emphasis behind it. And it was surprising the difference between the way that we just did it naturally and the way that happened after we'd been put in the correct position. So I'm hoping that it's proved that it can work. So I want to be able to do that myself without having to be physically put into that position, and the right way to breathe and the right way to stand. I'm hoping that after time that will come naturally, because it did have a visual effect on just my performance in general, and it had an audible effect on the way that I said my line and the power that it had behind it.